Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for coming. Today's press conference is to address the outstanding matter of an immigration appeal that has generated significant interest in the community. In late October, I received an appeal from the AME Church asking me, in my capacity as Minister for Immigration, to overturn a decision to not renew the work permit for Reverend Nicholas Genevieve Tweed, or Reverend Tweed as he is known locally. I have responded to that appeal, and this afternoon I will make clear the reasons for upholding the previous decision. I do this mindful of the Immigration Department's sensible practice of maintaining confidentiality with its clients. But this case was thrust into the public spotlight some time ago, generating intense discussion and significant misinformation, and therefore it warrants explanation so that people can have the facts before them. Two considerations framed the decision to not renew. The first relates to the integrity of Bermuda's immigration policy, which has been developed and refined by successive governments since passage of the Bermuda Immigration and Protection Act in 1956. It is an act that exists first and foremost to protect Bermudians in the workplace. Rules, regulations, and oversights within the provisions of the Act must apply consistently across the board for everyone. There is, in other words, one set of rules for everybody. Otherwise, the system breaks down. The second consideration relates to the two basic requirements for a work permit application. One, employers must advertise the position locally so that Bermudians can have a chance to apply. And two, the work permit applicant must submit accurate and complete information. The applicant failed to comply with these two basic requirements. The position was not advertised despite repeated requests by the department to do so, and the actual application was incomplete and contained inaccuracies. On the basis of these failures to fulfill the requirements of the immigration policy, the work permit application was rejected. And on the basis of the continuing failure to fulfill the requirements of the policy within the timelines set out by instruction of the department, I confirmed the decision. The details of my decision have been communicated to the parties involved. I do not intend to make that information public unless the parties themselves make a public call for clarity of the relevant facts. However, because significant misinformation has circulated in the public domain about this matter, I will take this opportunity to clarify how Bermuda's immigration policy applies in these circumstances. Ministerial involvement. It ought to be made clear at the outset that, in accordance with Section 13 of the Bermuda Immigration and Protection Act, the minister is ultimately responsible for the decisions of the ministry and of the board. Section 4.1 of the work permit policy states that a new permit application may be made no less than 1 month and no more than 3 months prior to the expiry of an existing permit. Should such application be made within 1 month prior to the expiry, the applicant must stop work unless the minister specifically authorizes continuance. The authorization is initiated by a request and a payment of the requisite fee, and may grant the applicant the right to continue working while the new permit is being considered. Information already in the public domain would confirm that I received such request dated July 13, 2016, and considered it at my appeals meeting the next day on July 14th. The permit in question was set to expire in just 5 days on July 19th, and at the time of the request, a new application had not been submitted. Because this was within the 30-day limit, it triggered my involvement. Had the application for permit renewal been submitted in a timely manner, the file would have gone directly to the Immigration Board without the necessity of the minister being brought into the process. It is the employer's responsibility to ensure that the timelines are adhered to. Advertising. In 2014, new policies respecting advertising were put into effect, with all positions being required to be advertised if they are to be offered to non-Bermudians, according to Section 115 and 116 of the Work Permit Policy. This policy, in short, applies to everyone, every individual, every company, every charity, every church. It is worth noting that every denomination has complied with this requirement since the new policy was put into effect. Completeness of a file. The Bermuda Immigration and Protection Act, Section 61(1)(a), requires work permit applications to be complete and accurate. If this is not done, the application may be rejected. Occasionally, if all the required information is not provided, the department will send follow-up requests for missing information, and it is expected that such information will be provided within the time frame specified in the request. Decisions are made based on the accuracy of the information provided, and an application may be rejected if the information provided is inaccurate or untrue. Need for a permit. A permit to work in Bermuda is required if an individual is subject to immigration control. A person is not subject to immigration control if he is registered as a Bermudian, or if he establishes that he is entitled upon application through the General Status Inquiry, GSI, to be registered as a Bermudian. A GSI application must have the necessary application form, a birth certificate indicating the ties to a Bermudian parent, and any other relevant information for a determination to be made. This is in accordance with Section 19 of the Act. I would add that it is not for the department to use anecdotal or hearsay information to determine whether an individual is or should be free of immigration control, and one who is free of immigration control does not need a work permit. To conclude, I want to be clear and personal for a moment. I'm a person of faith. I know the importance of church and religious institutions and the place they hold in our community. Church has been a place of refuge, safety, and renewal. In particular, the AME Church, both here and across the world, has been a bastion of Black history, struggle, sacrifice, and pride. I know, as nearly 60 years of membership can attest. This government respects the church, and we have had many conversations and correspondence on this matter, aware of its history and the importance of what churches and their leaders mean in our community. That said, Bermuda's immigration rules and regulations exist to protect Bermudians in the workplace and to ensure fair treatment in the consideration of applications by non-Bermudians who wish to work here. It is critically important that the intent and the spirit of these rules and regulations are upheld. Anything less would invite an anything-goes policy, calling into question the island's integrity and its commitment to protect the interests of Bermudian workers. In this particular instance, the applicant failed to comply with the rules that were put in place for everyone. As a result, I had no choice but to uphold the previous decision to refuse the new application.
Can you disclose how the application was incomplete or what inaccuracies were in the application?
That information has been provided to the applicant, and they are aware of it. As I said, that the purpose of today is to highlight and outline what the procedures are, and that I am purposely not delving into the specifics of the particular file.
Can you tell us how much longer Reverend Tweed will be able to work on the island, or will he have to leave immediately?
His work permit actually will come to an end as of this decision having been handed down. However, I will have conversations with his employer to ensure that there is as little disruption as possible in the transition process.
Now, you said in your statement that every denomination has complied with the requirements since they were established in 2018. Does that include
2014.
2014. Does that include the AME Church?
No, every other.
All right. Now, obviously, there has been some criticism of the decision in the past with how this has been handled. Has Reverend Tweed's activism played any role in this decision?
None at all. None
Are you-
at all.
Are you concerned at all there's going to be a public backlash about this decision?
I can only operate the department in accordance with the rules that obtain, and I cannot speak to how people might possibly respond to it. I certainly hope that people will look at the information that's been provided, the policies and procedures that exist, and to accept and appreciate the fact that that is the way that we must operate in order to be fair to everybody.
Has there been any discussion within government about how this decision will affect the island moving forward when it comes to possible protests?
That remains to be seen. Obviously, when one has something that is controversial, which is the reason why I thought I would just kind of get out in front of this, the decision was made, and I thought it was important to face the public, to effectively let them know that this decision has been made. And these are things that we have to manage and determine once, as life goes on. The one thing that you cannot do as a government, or certainly as a minister, is to manage and control a department based on what you think might happen. You can look at the rules, you can look at the application of the rules, and you can ensure that there is consistent and fair application of those rules. That's all we can do.
Has this been discussed by government?
Absolutely.
All right. Now, the AME Church has said in the past they've had some form of exception to the work permit policy as far as advertising. Can you say if that is the case?
That was the case up until 2013 when this initial application came through, but the rules changed in 2014. And in 2014, everybody then started from the same level playing field. So new rules were required and established in 2014 when the new rules came into effect. I think that it's natural to push back to say I didn't have to do this before, but the older system and procedures had been superseded by the new rules and regulations that came into effect in 2014.
And this just happens to be the first case involving an AME church pastor since 2014?
That's the first one that we've had an application for a foreign work permit for, yes, that is correct.